Your blood pressure reading this morning told your doctor almost nothing about when you are actually at risk. Not because the reading was wrong, because it was taken at the wrong time of day. And it has been taken at the wrong time of day at every single appointment of your life. Between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. today, your blood pressure will do something it simply does not do at 9 in the morning. It will rise. Not because you are stressed, not because you ate something wrong, but because of a biological shift that happens inside every adult body over 60 in the late afternoon, driven by forces your morning cuff reading will never capture. And right now, an estimated 30 million Americans over 60 who take blood pressure medication are moving through that window today, completely unprotected, completely convinced they are being managed correctly because their morning number looked fine. I am Dr. Chima Okoye, a physician focused on cardiovascular prevention, and what I am about to describe is not something I found in a textbook. It is a pattern I noticed across my own patients, people doing everything right, taking their medication on schedule, logging clean morning numbers, and still arriving at my office with strokes, cardiac events, and unexplained late afternoon episodes that nobody had connected to a specific hour of the day. Once I began asking what time their readings had been taken, the picture became impossible to ignore. The clock was the variable nobody had been tracking. So in the next several minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what is happening inside your body during that 3-hour afternoon window, why your doctor has almost certainly never raised it with you, and what you can do about it starting this week. Here is precisely what I am covering. Promise 1 is the specific biological mechanism that drives the afternoon blood pressure rise in adults over 60, why it is steeper, less predictable, and more dangerous in your body now than it was 15 years ago. Not in medical language. In plain terms, you could explain to anyone you love. Promise 2 is the one reading your physician is almost certainly missing, not because of carelessness, but because of when appointments happen and the exact time of day you need to be measuring at home to catch the pattern that predicts stroke and cardiac risk. Promise 3 is the 3 groups of adults over 60 for whom standard medication guidance is silently working against them in the afternoon specifically, and one question that tells you within a minute whether you belong to one of those groups. Promise 4 is the 4 specific questions to bring to your next appointment that pull the conversation entirely away from your morning number and onto the window where your actual risk lives. And Promise 5 is the single most common mistake people make when they begin measuring at home in the afternoon, a quiet error that makes their readings subtly lie in the 30-second correction that fixes it. There is also one thing most health sources say about the afternoon window that is not only wrong, but could be quietly making the problem worse. I will come back to that. Because the way they get it wrong is exactly the way most people over 60 are about to get it wrong. Let me tell you about Bernard. Bernard is 66, a recently retired civil engineer from outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Precision was his profession. He spent 4 decades designing infrastructure where small errors were not permitted. And when he was diagnosed with high blood pressure at 58, he applied that same discipline to managing it. He exercises 5 mornings a week without exception, 40 minutes on a stationary bike, heart rate tracked, numbers logged. He takes his lisinopril every morning at 7 sharp. He records his blood pressure before breakfast each day, same chair, same arm, 2 full minutes of stillness first. Both numbers written in a small log he keeps beside the coffee maker. His readings sat consistently in the range his cardiologist, at every 6-month visit, described as excellent. His chart was clean. Nobody had any reason to look further. He spent his afternoons quietly, reading in the front room with the radio on low, driving his wife, Renata, to her Tuesday watercolor class, starting dinner around 4, the slow building kind, the kind that asks you to stay patient. On a Thursday in November, Bernard was at his kitchen counter just after 4:30, slicing onions for a beef stew. The light through the window was that low, amber, late autumn light, the kind that sits just above the tree line before it disappears entirely. He reached for a bowl and noticed that his right hand, his dominant hand, the one that had held a pencil for 40 years, did not respond quite the way a hand is supposed to. Not painful, not numb in any way he could name, just fractionally delayed, the way a signal sometimes lags between the moment you decide and the moment your body moves. He set the knife down. He looked at the microwave display to check the time and found, for a moment he could not measure, that the numbers were not resolving the way they always had, simply not landing where they should. He stood at that counter and waited. Bernard had logged his blood pressure that same morning, 119/68. His cardiologist had reviewed numbers like those just 4 months earlier and called them excellent. What neither of them had ever once measured, not in 8 years, was what Bernard's blood pressure was doing at 4:30 in the afternoon. Bernard had a TIA, a transient ischemic attack. When his wife drove him to the emergency room that evening and the attending physician finally took a blood pressure reading, it came back at 178/102. Not first thing in the morning when the biological landscape of his body was calm and cooperative. At 6 p.m., 3 hours into the window nobody had ever watched. His morning readings had been accurate. They simply described a different version of his body, a version that existed before noon, before the afternoon shift, before the hour where his actual risk had been quietly building for years. So what is actually happening inside the body during that window? Here's the mechanism, stripped to its essentials. Think of your blood pressure regulation system like a relay race. Your body passes a baton through several biological systems across the day. Hormones, nerve signals, kidney function, vascular tone, and each runner in that race is calibrated for a specific leg of the course. In the morning, cortisol peaks. That surge of cortisol acts like a starting gun, telling your arteries to maintain tone, your heart to pump efficiently, your whole system to be alert and ready. Blood pressure rises with it. Then cortisol begins to drop through the late morning and early afternoon, and the arteries, particularly in adults over 60, do not always respond to that handoff cleanly. Here is where aging changes the relay. Younger arterial walls are elastic, responsive, able to self-regulate as hormone levels shift. Arterial walls that have been under pressure for decades become stiffer. They lose the ability to modulate fluidly as the baton gets passed from cortisol's morning peak to the secondary hormonal rhythms of the afternoon. Around 3 p.m., a separate biological driver, a circadian surge tied to physical activity resumption and late-day metabolic demand, asks those stiffened arteries to do exactly what they are no longer as good at: respond quickly. The result is a steeper, less predictable rise. Not a dangerous spike in someone with healthy, flexible arterial walls, a meaningful one in someone over 60 with even moderate arterial stiffness. And here is the variable that compounds everything: morning medication. Lisinopril, amlodipine, metoprolol, most common blood pressure medications taken at 7 a.m. reach peak concentration in the bloodstream by mid-morning. By 3 p.m., that peak has passed. Trough concentration, the lowest point in the medication's daily cycle, arrives precisely as the afternoon biological shift is cresting. According to research published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, the gap between medication trough and the afternoon circadian pressure rise is the period of highest uncontrolled hypertension risk in treated patients. Not the unmedicated morning, the medicated afternoon. Dorothy is 71. She spent 28 years as a high school principal in rural Georgia, and her relationship with her own health was, by her own admission, businesslike. She had a standing Tuesday appointment at her GP's office every 6 months. She took her ramipril at breakfast without fail. Her numbers, logged consistently in the morning, sat around 124/74. Her cardiologist told her she was a model patient. What Dorothy noticed, not dramatically, not in any way she could describe as alarming, was that she felt slightly foggy most afternoons around 4 o'clock. Not tired, just less sharp. She had attributed it for 2 years to getting older. Her daughter, a nurse, suggested Dorothy start measuring her blood pressure in the afternoon. On the third day, the reading was 163/95. Not a singular event, a consistent pattern once the right time of day was finally captured. The American Heart Association estimates that up to 25% of treated hypertension patients have afternoon readings that would reclassify their risk level if physicians were measuring them. Dorothy's morning readings had not been wrong. They had been reliably measuring the safest part of her day. Now, here is the piece that well-meaning health sources consistently get half right. The standard advice: take your blood pressure medication consistently at the same time every day, is sound as far as it goes. Consistency matters, but it does not go far enough because the time you choose is not neutral. The chronobiology of blood pressure management is well established in the research literature. A 2019 trial published in the European Heart Journal, the Hygia chronotherapy trial, found that patients who took antihypertensive medication at bedtime rather than in the morning had significantly better cardiovascular outcomes over a follow-up period of more than 6 years. The mechanism is straightforward. Nighttime dosing shifts peak drug concentration to cover the early morning rise and sustains meaningful blood levels through the afternoon trough. Consistent timing is necessary, but consistent timing at the wrong hour builds a predictable gap directly into the highest risk window of your day. Consistency and timing are two separate decisions, and most sources only discuss one of them. Here is exactly what to do this week. Step 1. Begin measuring your blood pressure in the afternoon, specifically between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. starting tomorrow. Sit in a chair with back support, feet flat on the floor, your arm resting on a surface at heart height. Do not measure within 30 minutes of eating, caffeine, or physical movement. Take 3 readings, 2 minutes apart, and record the middle value. Your morning reading still matters. Keep taking it, but the afternoon reading is the one you are newly collecting. Do this every day for 14 days without exception. Step 2. Build a 2-column log, morning reading in the left column, afternoon reading in the right. Date each row. After 14 days, look at the right column only. Calculate the average of your 14 afternoon readings. Then, identify the 3 highest single readings from that column. Write those 4 numbers down together. Step 3. Subtract your 14-day morning average from your 14-day afternoon average. If that difference is 10 points or greater on the top number, you have a pattern worth a specific conversation with your physician, not a general check-in, a conversation built around the words afternoon differential. Any gap of 15 points or more on the systolic reading warrants that conversation before your next scheduled appointment, not at it. But there are 2 more things. One of them is what I wish someone had shown me at the very beginning of this. And the other one is what changes everything for the 3 specific groups of people the standard guidance gets wrong. The 3 groups for whom standard guidance quietly fails are not rare edge cases. They are sitting in every cardiology waiting room in the country. The first group is long-term ACE inhibitor users, people who have been on the same morning dose medication for 5 or more years. Their bodies have adapted to that rhythm so efficiently that the afternoon trough is now structural, predictable, and completely invisible in their chart because nobody has ever measured around it. The second group is adults over 60 who exercise in the morning. Their post-exercise vasodilation creates artificially favorable morning readings that make their numbers look better than the underlying arterial picture actually is. By afternoon, when that effect has dissipated, the real baseline reasserts, often 12 to 18 points higher. The third group is anyone managing both blood pressure and blood sugar. The afternoon intersection of insulin response, postprandial blood flow shifts, and medication trough creates a compounding effect that neither their cardiologist nor their endocrinologist is typically watching simultaneously. Ask yourself, do you take blood pressure medication in the morning and manage glucose at any point during the day? If yes, you belong to this group. Now, step 4. Here is exactly what to do in your next appointment. Do not walk in and say your afternoon numbers seem high. That gives your physician room to reassure you. Instead, ask 4 specific questions in sequence. First, can you show me in my chart where my afternoon blood pressure readings are documented? If there are none, that answer is itself the data. Second, what is my systolic differential between my morning average and my afternoon readings? If they cannot answer, ask them to help you calculate it from your new 14-day log. Third, given my current medication timing, when is my trough concentration occurring relative to the 3 to 5 p.m. window? And fourth, can we order a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor with the report specifically analyzing the 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. window? Ambulatory monitoring is the clinical gold standard for capturing the afternoon pattern. These questions cannot be answered with, "It looks fine." They require your physician to engage with the window, not around it. Step 5. The single most common measurement mistake people make in the afternoon is taking their reading immediately after sitting down. In the morning, most people have been still for hours. Their baseline is already quiet. In the afternoon, they have been moving, walking, driving, standing in a kitchen. When you sit down and immediately wrap the cuff, you are measuring the tail end of activity, not resting vascular tone. Your reading will run 8 to 14 points high, not because your pressure is elevated, but because your body has not finished its transition to rest. The 30-second fix is a 5-minute fix. Sit down, set a timer for 5 full minutes before you take the first reading. Not 2 minutes, 5. The afternoon body takes longer to settle than the morning body. That single adjustment will make your afternoon readings honest in a way they have never been before. I have walked you through the steps, but I want to be honest with you about something. I built this framework over years of watching a pattern that should have had a name and a protocol long before it did. I had it in pieces. My patients did not. I have sat across from too many people who were doing everything right, taking every pill on schedule, logging every morning number with care, and still ended up in an emergency room on a Thursday afternoon with a chart full of clean readings that told everyone involved exactly the wrong story. What they needed was not more information. They needed a structured system for the one window nobody had ever handed them. That is exactly why I created the 4 p.m. fix. It is a 21-day protocol built entirely around the afternoon window, a daily tracking sheet, a structured checklist, and the exact physician conversation prompts you need to turn your afternoon data into a productive clinical conversation. Chair safe, designed specifically for adults over 60, and built around the measurement, timing, and logging method I have refined across years of patient care. This is the protocol I walk my own patients through before their 6-month follow-up. Not a general blood pressure guide, the specific 21 days that make the invisible window visible. Linda P., who is 65, put it simply. The doctor's conversation prompts helped her become organized and prepared in a way no other health guide had. James T, 72, told me he finally stopped worrying about unpredictable afternoon numbers and started noticing patterns instead, because for the first time, he had a daily structure that showed him what to look for. I have a lot of other testimonials, but I decided to handpick only these two. Here's what I need you to understand about time. Every afternoon that passes without a plan is another afternoon where the cortisol handoff happens, the medication trough arrives, and the window goes completely unguarded, exactly as it did for Bernard, exactly as it did for Dorothy. The biology does not pause while you decide. The book can be found in the description and pinned comment. For less than one copay, you get 21 days of a structured system built for exactly this. I won't keep it there for long, as I am only going to need 5 people, so I can follow up with them with regular email check-ins. This is the plan you hand to your afternoon. If someone you love is over 60 and takes blood pressure medication, send them this video before their next appointment, not after. The afternoon window does not announce itself, but now you know when to look. Subscribe for more on what the standard cardiovascular conversation keeps leaving out. I publish every week, and this is exactly the kind of thing I cover. This content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Please consult your physician before making any changes to your medication or monitoring routine.